Yo, today I'll teach you how to stop having wrist pain from your presses, or from any other movement. I don't know how to title this video yet. First of all, I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you feel wrist pain? You know, you might be ignoring it, and you say that you don't feel it, but in reality you really do. So be honest, bro. Do you feel wrist pain? If you do, then you're already ahead of most people. Most people will just ignore the pain until it's too late. But the fact that you've acknowledged it, that's the first step. Now let's look at your exercise selection. There are many exercises that can hurt your wrist, and I won't talk about all of them in this video. But in general, if you feel pain from an exercise, it's most likely your form that is wrong, not the actual exercise itself. So correct your form, lower down the weight, watch form videos, film yourself, do what you need to do. There are not really dangerous exercises, so you shouldn't really blame them. It's most likely your form that is wrong. But in very small cases, there are some exercises that not everybody can do. And if you fixed your form and you still feel pain from it, then you can just ditch that exercise. Now, lift is really mandatory to build muscle, even though most people try to tell you otherwise. If a lift really hurts you, then stop doing it. It's not that big of a deal. Especially because if it hurts you, then you're not gonna enjoy doing it. And that's the most important part, in my opinion, when choosing an exercise. If you don't like that exercise, then you shouldn't be doing it. But still, there are ways to change some exercises to make them feel right for you. For instance, most people tend to feel pain from front squats. But most people feel pain from it either because their form is bad, so instead of resting the bar on their upper chest, they rest the bar on their hands, and that puts a ton of pressure on their wrists. Your hands are there just to stabilize the bar, you shouldn't hold all the weight with your hands. And if you can't get into that position, it's because your wrist mobility is just not good enough. So you need to work on that. Not just because you want to front squat, but also because that wrist mobility issue will come back to you in the future. And it's gonna be worse, so you better treat it sooner. A good stretch that you can do for wrist mobility is just pushing your fingers with your other hand. I'll show some videos on the screen. Just hold that for a couple of seconds and you should be good. And do that a couple of times a day for about 20 seconds and your wrist mobility should come back. I wouldn't do this before your workout though, because you might get hurt that way. But while waiting for your wrist mobility to come back, you can do some other variations of front squats. You can use straps, which I wouldn't recommend if you use higher weight. Or you could do this kind of style. But the front squat is overall a very good leg exercise, so I wouldn't ditch it just because it hurts the first time you do it. You can also feel pain from things like wrist curls, and if you do, you can just swap them out for finger curls, which are basically the same exercise, but you curl the weight with your fingers instead of your whole hand. But when it comes to forearm growth, they're very similar. Now for some general tips with your wrists, every time you do a press, you should have your wrists stacked. So that means that your wrists should be parallel with your elbows. You shouldn't press with a broken wrist like this. Your wrist should always be strong like this. Because if you press with your broken wrist, that will put a ton of pressure on your wrist. So again, just fix your form. You gotta be careful with this, because a lot of people do this on things like overhead pressing. And a lot of people also start with good form, but as the set goes on, the wrist slowly starts going back. So be mindful of that and fix your form. A good way to stop having to do that is by using a suicide grip. You can get into that position a bit easier. So I recommend you to try that, especially on something like an overhead press. I wouldn't really do it on a bench press because, you know, that's why the name, suicide grip. And if the bar falls, then it's gonna fall on you. But on an overhead press, you're in a way better position and the bar can't really fall like that. And you can even do suicide grip on things like lateral raises, pull-ups, any exercise that may cause wrist pain. Also, using straps can lock you in better, even though it might seem weird to use straps on an overhead press, it can work. So I hope one of those tips helped you today. Just remember that it's not the exercise's fault that you feel wrist pain from it, and any kind of pain for that matter. For the most part, it's just about you fixing your form.